Hello, Polytopians. Thanks for tuning into the Polytopian Times YouTube channel. I'm your host, Sam, and today we've got ourselves a very fun replay involving three different players. We've got two turn zero tribes, Bardur and Kiku here, both very potent players, or rather tribes in their own right. And on the other side, we have Graddokk playing as Polaris. I know Polaris gameplay has been requested before, so glad to get this out. So let's see how this game turns out. Alright, well, off to an interesting start so far. Looks like our Bardur players got the worst spot in between both Kiku and Polaris. Everybody seems to have gotten a corner, largely at least, which is a good thing. That does help with the balance in the actual gameplay here. And a very essential component of how the game's going to play out. Early riders with our Kiku player, interesting to see. Of course, this is back in version 51 in the chop meta, so almost certainly, and here we already see our Bardur player going hard into it. Our Kiku player, although they have riders already, isn't actually going with chop just yet. Meanwhile, our Polaris player is just expanding, no worry about chop. That's Graddokk, of course, our wonderful submitter of the episode, and pretty good Polaris player. If you can judge from the video of this game, although this was an interesting game, of course. So, good expansion on everyone's side, and we're finally seeing Bardur getting their second city out, and they're lined up for a third one. So, carving out their borders fairly quickly here. A lot of level ups, getting that workshop in, and snowballing that economic growth. There we go. There's the stars back, 5 stars. That's going to be important for growth up here. Now, workshop or explorer? Explorer, that's going to be quite useful. And unfortunately, our Bardur player can now see it. He's hemmed in as far as expansion out to the west or to the north. So it's got to be east if he's going anywhere. And here we've got a workshop. Now, you see, another explorer would have been rather useful there to see if the other side was going to be viable or not. But I understand they need to get a little extra income in. And of course, our Kiku players continuing to expand, although 2 cities now that are undeveloped, they're definitely going to need to start leveling that up as quickly as they can. And Polaris, that's Graddokk, is finally up to 4 cities as well. There's that 5-star return up at 10 stars per turn right now. That's looking fairly good. There we go, with another workshop over here and here. That's all the cities leveled up at least once, getting workshops in at 14 stars per turn, was that? I'm sorry, let's go back. It transitioned pretty quick there. 14 and 14 for our Bardur player. Neck and neck in terms of economic development and expansion. And we've got some ruins for our Bardur player and roads coming down, which are going to be super useful combined with those riders. Now, of course, something interesting here about our Kiku player is their early night rush. And if I remember correctly, they don't have exceptionally good vision of what's going on here. They just happen to know there is a Bardur player, and he's got warriors, or at least one warrior that he can see, so he's not expecting anything super fielded. But, I mean, that's quite a pull, especially if you don't know quite where the city is yet. That's a rather expensive unit to just throw out there in a knee-jerk reaction. Meanwhile, of course, our Bardur player is well aware that there's a knight on the field already, and understands that they're going to be fighting a 2-front war off the bat. So, making the most of it that they can at 15 stars already, and only increasing that. Very good, very good. And here's our Kiku player, also at 15 stars. Interesting. Let's go back to Otto there. And getting all those level ups in. And ruins on their end, too, which can be very nice. I noticed no explorers here, focusing on workshops all the way. And, that's good to see, though, that their eco's definitely shooting up. They're at 13 stars. They're at least on par with everybody else on the field right now. And I think Bardur has a slight economic lead. But, unfortunately, that 2-front war situation has got them in probably the worst position still in this game. Meanwhile, Graddokk with Polaris is just ramping up his eco at 16 stars per turn, make that 17 stars per turn. You can definitely tell that he's going to be quite a rival for our Bardur player to contend with, and that's if we were to disregard Kiku on the other side. And going in for a hit on that Mooney, unfortunately, you're not going to get a kill, and that Mooney is more than able to run off if need be. Now, our Kiku players continue to do interesting things here. We've got another knight out. They know where his city is, but they haven't seen how to get into it yet. We're just shuffling him off to the side, not even producing, like, a rider to maybe help support an invasion there, and no road still either. Meanwhile, you're getting pushed over here, so there's more land connections than you're familiar with. At least they're expanding out to the northeast, so that's a solid direction to go. Yep, just trying to get those knights out of striking range. It was definitely not a great call putting those out that early on, that's for sure. Alright, we've got our first Gami out, and our first super unit in general. Good to see. At 19 stars already, versus 15 for a poor Bardur player. Although their swords are out, and that's going to be an aggressive push. Quite a good defensive and offensive unit to throw out, especially when supported with these riders. So it's going to be no easy fight, even though it's a two-front war. Polaris, Graddock's not going to have an easy time. Neither is our Kiku player. In fact, our Kiku player is going to have a bad time, because there's also defenders on the field. And with these many beefy melee units, even at 15 health points, these knights aren't going to be able to blitz through as easily as they envisioned when they thought they were going up against riders at first. So it certainly hasn't paid off yet, and I see that he's switching over to a rider rush himself. Or rather, when it's not warrior space. And not much going on with Graddokk right now. Just getting a defender up on his own and, expanding. At 16 stars per turn for a Bardur player, something interesting. So he sees that there is a defender here, and his sword's not going to easily be able to get in. I mean, with this many riders in the area, there's a very good chance he could still push in. But in general, he's gone for something interesting, which is getting philosophy early on. It does give you a variety of attacks and ability to do a lot. Should you need to, say, get archery up next, and you've got all the defense bonuses now, and ranged and ground warfare with swords and archers, that can be good. But also, throwing out a mindbender is an excellent counter to defenders, especially if he doesn't think that Graddock's going to have anything to counter that right now. And even against ice fortresses, interestingly enough. So, they aren't able to fire after moving, so long as you can get in range before it can be produced or something like that. It can be an interesting, like, in the fog tactic. To even mind been one of those. So, definitely an interesting play getting the mindbenders out to counter the defenders currently. But it certainly could work later on in the game, depending. And yeah, we've got our first giant out for Bardur. Our Kiku player is also at 15 stars, not far off from Bardur's 16. A lot of riders, almost no aggression. Really interesting getting this knight up in the front lines with no clear direction on what exactly is going to be done with that. And Graddokk is, of course, just focusing on increasing that economic output at 21 stars per turn already. Gonna be moving that Gami up so we can start freezing more terrain. We've got a Mooney in the corner of the ice over here ready to go. And just in general, throwing in a couple more defenders to block things up. Our Bardur player is at 17 stars, actually, right now. And just continuing to try and push. And he sees that Gami, so he's going to want to try and either line up to take the city or get some damage on that Gami. You got to sort of make a decision there. He does have the Mindbender up in position to at least get that defender there. But it might not make a huge difference. However, getting Arc Bugu, that is going to help quite a lot. That's the last free city our Bardur player had access to. And that did bump him up a little bit in terms of income. He's now at 21 stars per turn, which is what Graddokk with Polaris is making right now. So this is helping keep things a little more even for our Bardur player, who otherwise is in a rather not fun situation. Meanwhile, our Kiku player is doing nothing, just sitting around. And let's go back. I want to see what those stars per turn right at the end were here. Okay. So we're still sitting on 16. Was that 17? Do you get that village? I would presume so. No, not sitting on it. So 16, and not a very active turn whatsoever. Meanwhile, Graddock's already at 23 stars per turn and is only going to grow that income further. And we're getting to the point now where you can see all of these cities here are leveled up to level 3, I want to say that is, and they're only going to need another level up to start producing gummies, which means another wave of gummies is about to hit to support that first one that just came out. Here we see some border growth. Going to grab some whales with whaling. Might as well, since you have the ability to leverage that. Getting a Mooney up to get some freeze action on the front lines, and using that Gami to freeze the Mindbender so he can't do anything himself. And the Swordsman, a really effective bang for your buck freeze there. And lining up for another set of ruins, we've got a workshop. Interesting again, no explorer, but especially with Polaris, it can be understandable if you need to boost your income over getting some extra, production that way out. Sorry, some units. Interesting. So our Kiku player is continuing to do basically nothing. They're not aware that Polaris is even on the map right now, so they're focused entirely on Bardur. But due to their lack of proper competition, they're just not giving Bardur a lot of pressure. So Bardur's more able to turn around and counter Graddokk with Polaris. Now, Graddokk is really starting to course up towards a couple more gummies, but first we gotta get some more stars per turn. At 29, almost 30 stars per turn. You can't turn your nose up at that, especially when our next best Bardur has only got 21 stars per turn. I mean, 21's not bad for the turn of the game, but it's not great if you could be at 30 stars per turn instead. Alright, and here's Kiku, 19 stars per turn as a call out there. Not a lot they're doing. I mean, they've got catapults at least. There's something. They're trying to set up for a defense. But what that's going to be able to accomplish, not quite sure. At this point with the defenders, even archers, but I mean, catapults aren't a bad call to counter that. It's going to be nice against this giant, but I genuinely don't think with just one catapult and a couple of knights, it would be enough. I think you need a little more firepower, at least another catapult in the area. I don't think that he's going to have that up in time. The sword's going to be in range to weaken that defender, so that giant can get right in. So you're going to have to use both knights in the defense of that city, too. Which, I mean, that kind of sucks. And moving one knight away means you're not going to be able to use it as easily to defend, especially because they don't have roads still. And the Kiku player is still trying to run around without them. Meanwhile, Graddokk starting to move up to the north around the rim of the lake here and freeze across the middle, pumping out our second Gami. Bardur, on the other hand, is trying to handle both fronts. He does sense some weakness over here in Kiku, and he's going to take that city from him. A nice little gain. And at the looks of it, there's not a lot Kiku can do to stop him. And he's got catapults of his own along with those swords. That's going to be quite a problem for our Polaris player Graddokk to deal with. And of course we can see Kiku's just lost that city. There's literally nothing they can do to stop it. They didn't even bother to try to damage the giant. Getting a couple more catapults out, I guess that'll be useful later on in the game. There we go. Good expansion, using those riders to great effect. So running in and freezing enemy units like the sword, that would be nasty and chop up his riders. But instead, the multiple riders can come and deal a lot of damage to this frozen unit, maximize their potential there. And not bothering to attack the unfrozen sword. It's not worth the risk of damage. Of course, all this catapult spam that's starting to come out on basically everyone but Polaris' side is proving to be a bit of a problem for like the warrior spam on the front lines. And we are only seeing more catapults coming out. At 26 stars per turn right now, definitely not to turn your nose up at. Now we can see Kiku's really falling behind at 18 stars per turn. Still trying to maximize the use of those knights. I just don't think that knight's going to actually take a city. At least he's got more catapults out. That'll definitely help. And we're at 30 stars per turn even for our Graddokk with Polaris. And we get right into Liqueur right there. Putting a catapult that close to the front lines was definitely a risky move, all things considered. Especially in a city. And now Graddokk's able to push down south on Bardur, which helps. You want to open up as many fronts as you can. However, there's a lot of catapult power built up back there, so that's going to keep him back for a bit. And, I mean, at half health, that's a big risk. He doesn't want to lose that Gami this early on. He needs more. He's only got one other spare right now, and that's still getting up to the front line. There's our third Gami coming out. And now's a good time to start farming him, clearly, because we have Gami number 4. And 33 stars per turn. 18 stars for our Bardur player now, but he's managed to regain his city and get back to 22 with the help of some very useful artillery. And of course, he's going to just level out the knight in Flalen. I'm going to bother to kill that knight straight up and just open up some space. Still focusing on repelling our Polaris threat, but you can see the two front war is really not going great, especially because both opponents can focus all their efforts on our Bardur player, and our Bardur player has to focus on both sides if he has any chance of survival. Impressive that he's still up and standing, you know, and doing as well as he is under all this pressure, but I don't think it's looking good for him still. And here we are in Bardur, getting that defender in. Very nice, using the rider to open it up for the defender. Now outside of Lacour and just sort of pushing in a little further. We've got multiple Gamis ready to move forward and freeze a bunch of stuff. I believe we already got Polarism too, so that's enhanced movement on the ice there. Border growth to expand the ice sheet too, which is going to be really useful. No ice bank up just yet, but we do have an ice bridge that's finally connecting both sides of the lake here. And those Gamis are moving across diagonally straight towards our Kiku player. Interesting that as Bardur's clearly becoming a bit irrelevant, the fight has shifted to Kiku versus Polaris more directly. Of course, Bardur is doing their best to fight tooth and nail, but it's evident that they're starting to lose a lot of steam, especially in the face of all these catapults. And it's really working out for Kiku in this case, using those to support that one knight so we can get in and take shot. It's going to be hard to get back into Grulin and take that one back. And building up the Rico, still, only at 20 stars per turn, it's not the greatest for Kiku. They were definitely doing better earlier, I mean, even at 21. You can see that there's a gap clearly growing. At 35 stars per turn right now for Graddokk with Polaris, and that's only going to continue to grow as these conquests continue to push forward. And a just learned trade, which means an ice bank will be coming out sooner rather than later. As of right now, I believe we're going to be at 40 stars. Yep, 40 stars per turn. Got another Gami out there, very nice. And pushing that ice sheet across. Plenty of riders out to support, grabbing some more cities over here. Toto, nice. I wonder if it snows down in Africa. There we go. We got stars back. Lovely. And again, using those riders to just show up and really cause some pain for that one frozen swordsman who can't retaliate. Good. Pushing out that rider in front of Gufla. So he couldn't move forward and push him back out of Lacour, which means Graddokk should be able to take Lacour. And here it looks like the final front lines are sort of being taken over. Kiku's trying to push back into what's open, but there's not a lot of expansion zone without competition to come out of it. A lot of catapults are showing up. That seems to be Kiku's main push in terms of both defense and offense, supported by the spare knight, which I must admit is better than knight spam, hands down. Definitely a slightly more strategic use, but this this formation here in the middle is extremely vulnerable to like one enemy knight. So it really only holds out up until that starts being played against him. And we can see our Graddokk here, our Polaris player, is really getting ready to shove forward hard onto Gufla and take over that capital. I don't feel good for Bardur, and it looks like he just realized that there's this little old city over here, so again, that's an immediate confrontation. Okay, so something important just happened. Got the ice bank down over here. That sucker's darn near leveled up already, and the income for Graddokk as our Polaris player just jumped up to 70 stars per turn. Both of our other players are still fiddling around with the 20s somewhere in their terms of income, so Grraddokk's got well over 3 times that. That's going to be something they are not going to be able to contend with. And what was already a bad situation is only going to escalate in terms of how bad it's going to get. And see, now he can afford more than just rider spam. But, to be fair, both these players have quite a bit of stuff, and as our Bardur player is showing, to be quite tenacious. I'm actually surprised that our Bardur players still around and doing as well as they are at this stage in the game, given how much pressure they've had on both sides. Just trying to form a meat shield wall to hold back the enemy. Of course, Kiku's taking advantage of this. I'm going to retake Lucian. They don't want to have lost this. Oh, I realized you didn't have climbing there. Nice. Oh, you can see that there's a Gami here. You know you're in danger. There's not a lot you can do about it. But it's okay. Kiku's pushing up and into La Cour. And just trying to reposition those catapults as well. You got some good aggressive pushes all around there. And Graddokk is just pushing his Gamis across the sea. Again, most of Polaris gameplay is going to be about leveraging your freeze ability as best as you can, and that's certainly what he's doing here. Good move, freezing the ice to make a smoother connection from Toto on in, but also freezing that village up. And again, just hammering the Frozen Knight in the core, just moving up Agami is great because they have that auto-freeze ability. It is very, very useful, honestly crucial to the rapid sort of expansion you can see with Polaris. You're not going to really be able to pull off any level of expansion with that speed using just Moonies. It's going to be very difficult, at least very expensive, to try and replicate that. What you can do with Gamis with just Moonies. There we go, we've got another Gami out. The Gami spam is going quite nicely at this point. I believe we've got a total of 7 of them. Actually, make that 8, I think. Is that 8? There's quite a few, and it's going to be a continuing problem for our players. Bardur's down to 11 stars per turn now. Obviously, they've lost a lot of territory, but they're fighting bitterly outside their capital. Oh, interesting. Kiku pushed past, and he's into Flawlin. He's just going to take out some catapults and just really chewing up the entirety of the front line there. That was gorgeous. And a final good hit with veterancy on the Gami there. It is just chaos on the front lines, that is for sure, and I don't think that's going to be helping either of our standard tribe players repel Graddokk with Polaris. And those Gamis are about done making that land bridge across the sea. I'm going to lock down that little village, and that ought to be the last bit of expansion. Not bad. I don't think he's going to be able to take Cookie just with that, though. I have a feeling there's a catapult in range from Kiku's side that's going to stop it. Just doing the usual freeze business, moving up some defenders, some Gamis, riders. Starting to see that we've got catapults across the way. So you can see riders going to be coming, and we've got knights starting to show up in force. See, all that extra income was going to go somewhere, and it was going to go into knights to support all the wonderful, delicious freeze that's going on. And Polarism is another thing that our Polaris player has got. That lets them move at double the speed across dice, as if they were roads. So, really nifty to have, especially when you combine that with knights and Gamis. Of course, all of this artillery is going to mean we are going to be losing some Gamis. Well, Graddokk is going to be losing some Gamis trying to get across that bridge. There's only so much you can do, especially when you can't see what's shooting at you. And that's the one thing our Kiku player has in their favor. Time to still leverage defensive bastions with a bunch of catapults. Of course, they're starting to make some chains that will prove to be rather counterproductive for them in but some time. But for the moment, Graddokk still has to push on in and clear some space for his knights to do their work. So that was a good chain there outside Grulin, just wiping out catapults. You could see. He sees there's a break here, and that the knight was in the way, so he had to weaken it first. Unfortunately, it's not worth bashing your knight into a defender, so he's just holding off and getting what damage he can in. Moving up his Gamis, and just keeping up the pressure in the south, but again, the fight has shifted a lot of its focus towards the north. Because Kiku's really the most viable option to compete with Graddokk at this moment. And he's continuing to grow his economy up at 82 stars per turn versus 10 stars for Bardur. So literally over 8 times as much as Bardur has. And our Kiku player's at 33 stars per turn. Not bad for 10 turns ago. But again, at this stage in the game, it's just not making a big difference. He's still under half of what Graddokk's pulling in, and he's blowing quite a bit of it on knights and catapults. And don't get me wrong, the catapults are a huge bang for their buck, but they're about to be obsolete. We're seeing a mass amount of riders and knights able to cross this ice. And our Kiku player is not able to break the ice back, which is crucial. You are not going to be able to repel the onslaught if you cannot break the ice back. Beautiful lineup, getting a knight right into Leoki. That's going to break the back of our Kiku player even further. Beautifully done. Moving that defender right into Grraddokk, just lined up outside. Now, Likuki's been a problem, and he's got to get all the way through it so he can get that catapult out of the way, because that's what's been stopping him from taking Kuki, and now he can finally see it. This whole time, he hasn't been able to see it. All right. And honestly, a lot of this late stage is just getting catapults and knights into place on his own. And we can see Graddokk is finally pulling out some catapults of his own to deal with some tougher, more entrenched positions where he runs into them. Although knight spam is still the name of the game right now. And if the shoot order had been a little different there, our Kiku player might have actually been able to kick him out of Grraddokk, but as is, Graddokk's just going to keep it by the skin of his teeth, and that is all he needs in this case. He's getting back into Kuki. He really needs to take that out, but it's not going anywhere if he can't get rid of that catapult, which he just did. Very, very well done there. And a push into Kuki as well. So, nice. As we can see, we've covered this whole northern front here. That's condensed down and under Graddokk's hands. The expansion of Pol News lockdown Toto. This becomes a brand new viable production side too. That's going to guarantee Kiku will lose anything that continues. We've also got Grraddokk falling. Leoki's about to go. Really, this is the turn where everything falls apart for Kiku, like the way that it sort of has already for Bardur. Although, to be fair, Bardur is holding on and even starting to flourish a little in their reduced state, given the reduced attention they're getting from, honestly, both players. Just getting that road network developed for rapid mobility of the knights there. And finally taking Grraddokk, an essential bit of growth here. And off and into New Silu. With the vet there. Yes, you can see everything is falling apart for our Kiku player, unfortunately. Very nice. Just doing a little bit extra growth here. Every little bit of frozen land or water helps build the ice bank up ever further. And at this point, Graddokk's just barely below 100 stars per turn. And at this rate, let's see, 99 stars per turn, one off. And our Bardur players actually managed to push their economy up to 13 stars per turn from the 10 they were at a couple of turns ago, up to 14 now, which is rather impressive, all things considered. I mean, they've now got more income than our Kiku player, who is at 13 stars per turn, up to 17 now that they've regained some territory. But, yeah, just, kind of surprising how the spawns came out, and yeah, how the game wound up actually turning out. I would have expected our Kiku player to have done a little better overall. So, our Gamis are just continuing to push up to cities and freeze them. And you can do this with Gamis or Moonies. Or, honestly, Ice Archers are a fantastic option for it. They're really cheap, and they can strike from a distance. So, you can freeze a city from where those Mooney and Gami are standing right now, and then keep it frozen perpetually for but 3 stars. It's a pretty good deal, all things considered. And here we see our Graddok's gotten on into the capital of our Bardur player and has functionally collapsed all of the remaining defenses that Kiku had in a turn or two. It's almost certain the knights and everything are going to go through and run for a win. Now, unfortunately, the last turn of this game is bugged out, and even if I were to get that play button going again, oh, let's see, it's actually working this time, so that's good. Oh, there, froze out again. Let's see. Maybe if we click the play button again. Nope. Okay, this time it definitely broke out. Something's wrong with the end of this turn, unfortunately, and it's bugged out to no end. And it did what it did last time, which is skip all of turn 26, and we are looking at what is actually turn 27. The end of the game, Bardur fell to a wave of knights, along with a rider and Gami push, which we saw earlier on. And of course, Kiku crumbled mostly to just knight spam, and a couple of Gamis making a bridge across and just becoming a nuisance of themselves. A couple of scattered units throughout here, and one city left under Kiku's belt. The only free city that isn't owned by Graddokk. But at the end of the day, this is clearly a win for Graddokk, and I definitely want to say this is well played. It was interesting watching a player's player come out and play and not use ice fortresses or battle sleds or ice archers. At least two of which are quite useful units. I know there's some contention about ice fortresses. I think they're definitely useful in some use cases. But yeah, they're certainly not par for par a good trade-off with, say, a battleship in terms of power on their stats alone. But if you take into consideration that they're usually 8 stars less to make than a battleship out of a defender, which would cost 23 stars versus the 15 stars for the ice fortress, they're definitely cheaper. You definitely get to skip a whole upgrade cost off the bat there, which is nice. So something to keep in mind for sure. But yeah, really well played. Gotta give it hands off to Graddokk there, beating 2 turn 0 tribes. And I just want to say thanks as always for tuning into the Polytopian times, and until next time, see ya.